Speakable, a podcast for the people.
Welcome to Speakable. This is a space for showcasing conversations about all the interesting and important things the faculty and students are doing at FCAT.
What we hope is to have engaged and informed conversations focused on current issues of the day. Thank you for listening.
In this installment of Speakable, we begin to ask an impossibly broad question. What about AI? How does AI feature into research, teaching, and the activism that is going on in FCAT? This is an issue that in one way or another touches all our work, but for this week, I was able to speak with Laura Marks in the School of Contemporary Arts and Michael Filimowicz at SIAT.
Yeah, I'm Laura Marks. I teach in the School for the Contemporary Arts here at SFU. I've got the Small File Media Festival. I have the Substantial Motion Research Network, which is artists and scholars interested in non-Western approaches to media technologies. I'm now in a research group on the environmental impact of machine learning and a couple of other things.
I'm Michael Filimowicz, and I teach in the School of Interactive Arts and Technology at Simon Fraser University Surrey campus. Yeah, right now I'm in. And I guess I would say it's a new phase of my life in the sense I'm just focusing creatively on mainly one thing these days, which is electronic music and AI video, where the visuals are made by AI.
One of the first questions I asked is how they each came to AI in their research and their teaching.
Really from cinema studies and working on experimental media. I think from the earliest days, I've always been interested in the materiality of the media, whether it's like celluloid film or analog video. And then especially with the rise of digital media, which people were seeing as immaterial, and especially when streaming comes along and suddenly you only have the playback medium on site, right? Because the storage medium is a data center, and that's far away, maybe even another country, and the delivery medium is a network that's probably underground somewhere. So I've just always been thinking about what is the materiality of our media, and suspicious when somebody from industry says, "Oh, it's so light, it's really immaterial, it's virtual."
Oh my God, that's amazing. I want to know now about the environmental impact on machine learning.
Yeah, so now, thanks to my colleague Arnie Eigenfeldt, we're now starting a project to calculate the environmental impact of AI. Because Arnie was inspired by my Small File Media Festival, and he is a composer who uses not generative AI, but machine learning. And he wanted to devise small file generative music. So for part of this grant, again, I'm putting together a team with 2 media scholars and two computer scientists.
Wow, that's amazing, Laura. I have to ask again my very first question, which is how in your trajectory of work, how did you come to this interest in environmentalism and media and from art, right?
Mm-hmm. I'll be delighted to tell you it's a new project. The research is quite new, but it comes out of a project I did in 2020 and 2021 on calculating the carbon footprint of streaming video. And that was with a research group of 2 media scholars like me and 2 computer engineers here at SFU. And we reviewed all the literature, mostly in computer engineering and related fields, on the energy consumption of the internet and of streaming video in particular, and found out that the impact of streaming video is really, really high and so little known. The internet as a whole contributes about 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and that's rising at about 5% per year, and that's double the aviation industry. So people are always shocked when they hear that, because people think of the internet or think of streaming as being immaterial, as files being stored on a cloud.
I haven't heard anything on e-waste lately, but I'm sure it'll come.
It's one of the cool things I learned about in this survey of computer engineering is life cycle analysis. And this is, or a life cycle environmental footprint analysis. So this is looking at the whole footprint of digital devices, from the initial mining to manufacturing, to use, to disposal. And in fact, for devices, for phones in particular, the great majority of their electricity use happens in the factory, based on the idea that people are supposed to throw away their phones after 2 years. And that's also a large amount of their carbon footprint, because most of the factories where phones and other devices are made are in China, Korea, Taiwan, India, and they draw mostly on fossil fuels. So, when you look at the whole life cycle, there's a very, very heavy waste and pollution and debt to the earth.
I was curious about whether AI or some form of automation, algorithmic automation, is becoming to feature into these pipelines, into these platforms, into these infrastructures, and is that part of your work?
So to your question now about the environmental impact of AI, it's driving, that 4% and growing that I mentioned. It's growing really, really fast now, and you've probably read about or heard about the enormous expansion of data centers specifically to serve AI, and it is nuts. In the States, Microsoft and Alphabet are buying or renovating nuclear power plants. In other places, it's a lot to get into, but basically there's an enormous expansion of data centers, and where they're going to get their electricity is a very contentious question. I really think that the expansion of data centers and of information communication technologies as a whole is just one of the best examples of rampant capitalist growth that's not sufficiently government regulated, and it's really setting our planet on fire.
Given the underlying thread of creativity, my interest with both speakers was how they understand the interplay between art and AI.
How have your interest evolved then, and how have you arrived at sort of AI?
Okay, well, so right now I mean, and I guess I would say it's a new phase of my life in the sense I'm just focusing creatively on mainly one thing these days, which is electronic music and AI video, where the visuals are made by AI. In the past, I have, if you look over my CV or whatever, I've worked in a lot of different media, public art, interactive installations, internet art, experimental music, whatever, soundtrack, sound design. I feel, I guess, as one gets older, maybe one just decides to sort of take everything you've done in the past and just like make a triangle out of it, bring it all to one point, like just take all that past stuff I've done, and just like bring everything to like one thing. That's how I would sort of I'm thinking of how where I'm at right now creatively is like. Because with music, I mean, I've always loved music videos, and when I've taught video, I've always used music videos. I've assigned students to make music videos. It's just something that's always can be culturally relevant. It's a way to bring in lots of creativity into a course. Practically, like in like an intro video course, you can just focus on the visuals, not worry about the songs. The sound is the music. So I've always used music videos in all kinds of ways in my courses. So yeah, I've been making music videos for a few years, and then I just jumped on the AI stuff right away, and so I started making my music videos as where the AI is doing the visuals. So I make the music the usual DAW, like digital audio workstation way, or with modular synthesis or algorithmic composition, and then the visuals are done with AI. So that's when I started getting into working with AI as an artist. Yeah.
So I'm curious. In your work, what do you think about the difference between before you started using AI and after you started using AI in terms of creativity, type of creativity, how you're becoming creative, authorship for yourself, and also how do you transfer that into the classroom? Like, what do you talk to students about?
Okay, so I sometimes describe it as AI is the rebirth of the death of the author. That's how I kind of think of it. It's because it's all those like death of the author themes where it's not original to you. You're manipulating a semiotic field that's actually manipulating you instead. There's no originality and there's no author, and it's just this collective field of meaning and so on. And I'm okay with that. To me, it's like, oh yeah, this is like the 90s. this is like all that post-structuralist theory I was doing. It's like that's what AI is. It's because it's just this. There was I used this term that I came across in the 90s of being like a hermeneut, right? Not the opposite of hermeneutics, but sort of exploring meaning space. And AI is just a way of exploring meaning space and it's kind of like really like, like one of the, like I sometimes describe semiotics as like the first systems theory. Before Bertalanffy did, general systems theory, there was semiotics, which is the systems theory of language. And to me, it just feels like, it's like it almost feels like this is what I was educated for as an undergrad and as a grad student. It's like, oh, finally it showed up as a medium you can play with. So these are some of the ways I think about it. I sometimes touch on more practical things like just like copyright, because there's a lot of ideas about theft and stealing and copyright, and so I bring a bit of copyright law into the class. I say, I know some of you think that it's just stealing from artists and so on, but the way copyright law works is it's the general idea of something does not belong to anybody. It's the particular concrete expression in the medium that is subject to copyright law. The general idea of something is not copyrightable. So as long as you unless you tell AI to give me Darth Vader, which is a copyrighted thing, for the most part, is going to, because depending how you do prompt writing, it's not going to give you a direct copy of something. It's going to give you it's going to give you an algorithmically produced output that, I think in terms of copyright law, it's the general idea of something.
Art is so much more than creativity. There are ethics, politics, authenticity, copyright. What does it mean to add AI and stir to this already complex expression of human activity?
So something interesting then on authorship. I mean, if we keep circling through different variations of death of the author, if authorship is, and perhaps authenticity is not that important with anything that is generative, with ChatGPT, in terms of writing. So if those aren't the criteria that we're going to be looking at now, because it's just not practical, as you said, what should be the criteria?
Well, there's still taste. Like the old Kantian notion. You'll go back to Kant here and aesthetic judgment, right? Like there's still the idea of not turning out tacky crap, right? And there's still the idea of that saying that, hey, my AI art represents my education in culture and art and what I think is a valid aesthetic statement. And like, there's still the experience, the aesthetic experience. It could be all the classic, the sublime or whatever. There's still the holistic experience, and that is, I think, that is something that you can, and that's where I think I go, because when I'm making using AI to make art, I'm not thinking about, am I going to put my signature on it? Like, this is by Michael. I'm like, does this reflect, my aesthetic vision, my values, my sense of, cultural history? Am I balancing these elements right? Should I add the word chiaroscuro into my prompt to get a nicer lighting? Like, so to me, it's like it's a way to express your education in art history and art theory, and that's all there. Like that's to me that doesn't go away. And the only thing different is that maybe I can't stamp my name on it as much.
How do you sort of introduce that into the classroom with your students' works, for example? I know you. That's really interesting that you talk to them about copyright. I think that's really an important perspective that in our programs generally they don't get a lot of talk about policy, but when you give them assignments, how do you scaffold that? How do you talk to them about?
The other thing too is I redesigned my photography course. Now it's called digital photography. Now it's called digital, virtual, and AI photography. And the AI there is really to get the students to. It's a way of integrating the ideas from the lectures and readings into the AI. So it's a pedagogical tool mainly. So if I talk about exposure or lens types or deadpan photography, take those ideas from the lecture and then do it in your prompt writing. So the prompt writing becomes a way of revisiting the course concept. So I use the AI strictly pedagogically, but the point is for them to actually do the prompts. Okay, in this image, I have a Leica lens. It's 50 millimeters, fast exposure, fast fall off, whatever. I use AI a lot personally, but then I share how I use AI with students just to present not, the model, a model of this or some models. So these are some ways you can use it. For my game design course, I say, look, most of you don't have an art and design background. And if you want really great visuals, it's fine to use AI, and that's one reason why you might want to use AI. And if you've got those design skills, then use them.
But once again, where do we insert the ethics of environmental impact?
So it's almost a relief to me that the environmental impact of artificial intelligence is something that people are learning about. It's kind of harder to ignore. They draw, because they're both in their training and in their use, they draw on such massive amounts of calculation that, it's been, like I think training one large language model uses as much energy as a human lifetime by one standard, or driving a car for a year by another standard. Like, all these numbers are kind of hard to compare, but they use a lot of electricity. And not only training, but also the iterations of use, or what they call inferences. So if you use ChatGPT or Google Translate or even the virtual backgrounds that we use, that some people use in video calls, all of those are using AI to carry out calculations.
That's right. Yeah, background subtraction in real time, all of that stuff. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So, and these have been just worked, very, very quickly normalized in wealthy parts of the world, I have to say, in parts of the world where the infrastructure is robust and where people can expect to have kind of new devices. So again, it's a rich people's problem. It's kind of a white people's problem.
Well, yeah, we're creating the problem, but the whole world is experiencing the problem. So, what can art do? What can all of us do? But what do you see as art's potential?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is something I'm actually kind of excited about because, image generation AI uses a humongous amount of electricity. Image generation uses 750 times as much electricity as a text classification AI for a single task. So it is a worry if lots of artists start just using AI to generate images. But there are, for art and for other uses, really mostly for other uses, there are not only large language models, but there are small language models that don't have as many parameters, don't require as many passes to train the AI. So they use less energy. And something that my research group is planning to do in the next few months is create a tiny language model. So it's going to use very few parameters. It's going to be very efficient. And then we're hoping to incorporate it into the Small File Media Festival and invite artists to submit artworks made with a tiny language model. So they're probably going to be a little more abstract, a little more minimalist than things made with large language models. They can be examples. So when we share our research, we'll say, hey, look at all the great ways to make art that includes a generative element, but can still be mindful about its environmental impact and be elegant and beautiful. So it's about awareness.
Yeah, and I really see this as the contribution from artists, is kind of setting this example of an ethical, a fully ethical self-reflexivity about the work that you do, and being very transparent about how it's using resources, what it's impacting. I think it's like setting an example and a model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's ethical, and it weaves the ethics into the aesthetics. So we can say, oh, this is a really,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, I love
yeah.
that. Ethics
We can
into the
enjoy
aesthetics.
that part of its beauty is that it has a light footprint.
So you're not worried for your own creative work?
Well, I mean, if it becomes Terminator, John Connor will save us. No, I have crazy ideas. Like, I feel like all of our computer labs should have like those giant Frankenstein switches on the walls where we can just turn off the internet and just say like, and have little sparks flying off of it. And you just like, okay, haha, you all cannot use the internet now. Write with your fingers. Right? So, or we have the whole mountain here. We could do like boot camps in the woods where there's no cell signal and just make them write on paper. So I sometimes feel like we could probably use like internet-free zones and actually make them do live writing, live thinking, live talking, where they're not going to be staring at their cell phone screen and like, So those, I don't know how practical that would be like across 30,000 students, but, finding ways to get them to do some unenhanced writing and thinking for sure, like in your presence, is not going to hurt anything.
And maybe it's about the variety, right? Like kind of alternating these modes, stimulating different parts of the brain, different skill sets, different activities.
And there we have it, two sides of the coin. Generative AI as standing on shoulders of giants, prompt writing as art, as itself an expression of creativity and knowledge, and on the other hand, the media geology of computing, the environmental cost to this mediation. Join us for more topics in AI in the future.
This has been an episode of Speakable. Speakable is also broadcast live on CJSF, SFU's campus radio at 90.1 FM. If you are a student interested in getting involved, drop us an email and stay updated on FCAT social media and at www.sfu.ca/fcat/news/fcat-podcasts/speakable-podcast.